you remember the Cobra Kai motto?
Oh, do I? Strike hard, strike fast, and no mercy.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the new Viper that 908 just dropped.
Right. Instead of roundhouse kicks to the face, it kicks to the unknowns with FTI on ramen. It's really cool.
And with the smart spectral processing, it sweeps the leg and reads the compound.
Yep. It's still while managing to yell at teenagers. So
it's kind of badass, though. It's like having Mr. Miyagi in your corner.
right. So check out this new champ at 908devices.com and have no mercy for your mystery chemicals. And in 2024, there was 138 hazmat responders in the U.S. that were injured. That's 138 too many. So your team mission is clear. Do your job, do it well, get everybody home safe.
But in order to do that, you need training that works in the real world, not just theory.
Right. Work with us, the Hazmat Guys. We are the top-rated hazmat trainer in JM Powers in 23, 24, and 25. And we are bringing thousands of field hours, cutting-edge equipment, and fully customizable programs built around your team and your location.
3 steps clears your path towards zero injury hazmat operations. 1, you're going to schedule a call. 2, we sit and we tailor a training plan around your needs. And 3, we come and execute the best in-class drills on your turf.
Don't wait. Sales spots in Q4 are limited, so secure your team's spot today.
If you have not already, go check out the Hazard class with Jake. He just, I don't know if he released it. I'm pretty sure he released it with myself. That was a fun little interview. The Industrial Strength show is rocking and rolling. They are doing absolutely phenomenal. I highly suggest this one to my firefighters out there, or my technicians that are firefighter based, because when you respond in with industry, it would be really good to be able to start to understand their language. I am more shocked than anything else at the differences on how the two cultures work, communicate, talk, thought process, things like that. So get in there, listen to them, and have a heads up on all your industrial stuff.
And check out the newsletter podcast. Short snippets, global news read to you, and it's just ear fire to get the ideas going while you're driving in. Hazmat Happy Hour, 4th Thursday, 1 hour chat enters you into the scholarship draw for the Southernmost Hazmat Conference, February 3 through 5, 2026 in Key West, Florida. And if you want some grant funding and strategies for fire, police, or other agencies, email us at info@thehazmatguys.com. And conferences, DGO/Label Master, Dangerous Goods Symposiums will be there. Virginia Hazmat, Hot Zone, and NASTPO, which is in Arkansas.
Arkansas. We've been enjoying some classes down in Arkansas. Great bunch of guys.
Good times. So we are continuing down that DOT Class 4. And, good times.
Probably for me, probably one of the more interesting of the classes. Like, if you know me, you know I love my oxidizers and stuff like that. But class 4 with the flammable solids, the dangerous when wet, they all have their own kind of intricate properties. So we want to talk a little about mitigation and suppression strategies. And again, remember, anything that we talk about, these are very broad generalizations. You have to do your research on the specific material that is in front of you in that moment. Same thing when we talk about oxidizers and peroxides. Like, we can have general comments about what should be done, but they're just generalized. So we want to make sure, most of all, that we're not doing anything inappropriate with these class 4 dangerous materials. And water application consideration is definitely like at the top of that checkoff list to determine, do we want to do this or do we not want to do this? And it is prohibited for most water reactive materials that land in that 4.3 category.
All right, just adding water could, because water is pretty energetic. It's bundled up in energy, and you put something super hot on it, it could splash molten material everywhere.
And there have been instances where we worked where this is exactly what has happened. Now, that doesn't mean that water is not anything that we go towards, right? We can still use water for cooling exposures from a safe distance, but we got to be really careful that water is not going to somehow interact with the product that is a no-go for water.
And specifically, I mean, there are a couple that are for pools, right? Like pool chemicals. And if the SDS says you can do some flooding techniques and the dilution is the solution kind of thing.
Which is actually something we often talk about when we talk about responding to pool chemicals is, you get a shed in somebody's backyard. What do we say to do with those chemicals? Boom, toss them right into the pool. That would be a type of flooding technique. It's a pool chemical. It deserves to be in the pool. We want to also take a look at our Class D extinguishing agents. Something like a sodium chloride base dry powder for magnesium, sodium fires, potassium fires. Those can be a heads up. And we've got a couple of different types of extinguishing agents within the Class D.
Yeah, you got the copper based ones for like the lithium and lithium alloy fires, which is kind of a topical thing nowadays.
And then you have your G1 powder and your Metal X, right? These are going to be specialized extinguishing agents. They're specifically powders that can be placed on top of burning metals to help kind of squash them. Although maybe we'll do a review of an incident that happened once with G1 powder.
Yeah, I mean, you can go back in the episodes. We've done a couple of episodes on Class D extinguishers. So if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, go hike back a couple of years and you'll find it. But sand. Right, sand has an application for smothering like very small metal fires, but there's better products out there for that. So when we do our suppression techniques, right, we're trying to put these things out, we need to understand the material. Because we just told you, if it's lithium, you bring this one out. If it's a metal, you bring this one out. You got to kind of understand what you're doing so that you can pick the right material for that behavior. And we have a couple of different ways we can do it, methods. We can apply an extinguishing agent in a sufficient depth for a smothering blanket. Now, what I would like to say is people just put like the blanket on top. A lot of times you got to put the blanket underneath as well.
Because it's going to burn down.
Good.
Yeah, well, that's what happened. That one instance with the G1 powder that I'm thinking of. They put it over. There's a wood floor, and it literally. Anyway, the whole place burned down. And the not just the type of material, but the phase that it's in. Now, we often are going to consider things that are powders to react a lot like liquids. But if we think about a really fine powder, we have to be very careful how we apply any kind of agent to that, right? We want to use something like a low velocity application, because if I were to just go and I would apply material generally compressed in a cylinder, that shot of air, that movement of the powder into the powder, for lack of better words, is going to disrupt the entire application and blow the material all over the place. On top of that, if we've already applied a Class D extinguishing agent, we often are looking to form this kind of this crust, right, where the material is going to melt over the metal and help to smother it. And if we don't apply the next layer correctly, we could break up that protective coating and render the whole thing useless.
And then after you've applied this, patience, Daniel's son. Wait for it to cool, because it's sitting there. It's in this little crust. It's still hot as hell, and it takes time. So before you dispose of it, wait for it to go down.
And like real patience, right? Like we're not poking this thing with sticks, just trying to see what, like, we really want to go through, and waiting for it to cool also means that we avoid things like water and CO2 or conventional dry chemical agents. You have to understand that a lot of these metal fires, they burn so hot that they will separate the actual molecules from CO2 or water and make the situation far worse. We want to look now at some self-heating material control, right? How do we control something that's going to heat itself? Well, one thing we want to do is try to remove any additional heat sources or sources of ignition from the area. This works really great with a thermal imaging camera. If you can get there soon enough where something is in that kind of slow state of decomposition, releasing heat, decomposition, quite often there'll be a little bit of a hot spot. If we can find that hot spot and remove that hot spot from the rest of the material, we can greatly reduce the potential that this thing has.
Right, just by increasing your ventilation, right? Because heat, if the air frame around it is not moving, well, then it stays warmer. It's like an insulating blanket. If you displace that by putting a ventilation, a fan across it, it blows that blanket off and it keeps cooling it faster.
And then conversely, you can try applying some kind of a cover to it, a blanket. That's where the sand that Bob mentioned before comes into play, vermiculite, any kind of an inert material is going to help block out the oxygen. Now, I know it just sounded like we kind of contradicted ourselves, right? Like Bob's like, hey, you got to ventilate. I'm like, hey, you got to cover. But there is a balance between the two. And you got to kind of figure out for the material and the stage that it's burning and where it's at, what the best situation is going to be.
Now, obviously, you want to kind of monitor the temperatures and make sure that we are going in the right direction. So you use our temp gun that gives a number, not a thermal imaging camera, for this part, because I want to actually know a number and then delta T, right? Wait some time and then see another number. Are we trending in the right direction? So that's kind of like the big deal. Now, we could be dealing with a spill or containment, right? And different class 4 materials require specific spill response approaches. For example, let's say we have a flammable spill, a solid, right? Now, the solids could spontaneously combust, so we want to eliminate the ignition sources immediately, because if we apply certain things, they could liberate certain flammable gases. And if we just cut it off and say there's no ignition points here, then we've kind of taken that whole part out of it, taken the bullet out.
Right, except for us as the ignition source, right? We always kind of remember that. And going down that path, we get to break out our beryllium tools, right? Because this is absolutely where we want to be using our non-sparking tools when we're trying to recover this material. Remember, sources of ignition are not just external sources, but we and the tools and the things that we do can be that source of ignition.
And as silly as it sounds, like you're like, come on. If you sweep up a powder, there are sometimes that the friction loading of the broom is enough to ignite. So if you're doing this, do it in short little strokes and be very diligent to not create a lot of friction. You're trying to pop it. I don't want to say it the wrong way. You're trying to flip it kind of in there as opposed to dragging it across the ground. Hey, Mike, take a look around you and tell me how many lithium-ion batteries you have around you right now.
5 right here on my desk.
See, batteries are everywhere, and every department in the nation and, hell, the globe is starting to deal with battery fires on a regular basis.
And we are excited to tell you about a new product that's been proven to limit and control the battery fire propagation. It's from a brand called Geo, and they are chock full of hazmat experts who know that there is a better way for first responders to handle, store, and ship these at-risk lithium-ion batteries.
Yep, this product will solve your lithium-ion battery problems. It's lightweight. It works across all battery types, and we can say it lives up to the hype because we've actually tested it firsthand.
It's called ObexionFR, and it's part of a 2-part system. The first part is a scientifically designed granular, and they pair that with a UN-certified paler drum. More importantly, ObexionFR is proven to reduce the toxic IDLH gases that are emitted when one of these batteries kick off. So all in all, it's going to help keep your team safe.
To check out more, go to thehazmatguys.dgeo.com. That's thehazmatguys.dgeo.
And as long as we're talking about batteries, we promised that we'd be looking into a solution for battery fires. And many companies have put their products in front of them, and many have been rejected by us. But there was one noteworthy one, because in our testing, it extinguished lithium-ion battery fires. But it's not a one-trick pony, right? It does multiple classes of fires. It also helps prevent fire from spreading and the lithium-ion batteries from reigniting.
And before that guy, I just saw a meme that was made for him on one of these alternate hazmat groups, and it was so good. I cannot wait for it to hit the public because it'll land very good. But if before that guy starts writing to us, there are links in the show notes for UL Class A and B, as well as the BSI for 10 categories, including the lithium-ion batteries.
And we've actually put these things to the test. Like I said, we put out our own lithium battery fires. I was personally impressed with the results, but we always suggest that you do your own myth busting. What's kind of cool about this product is it's a whole variety of different options, so it can integrate into whatever firefighting process you have. Check them out at Fire Suppression Solutions or click on the link provided in the show notes. Yeah. Plus, you're generating static electricity if you're dragging. It can be it can actually be very complicated to pick some of these solids up. And then once they are up, before we go placing it just in any container, we need to make sure that that container is actually appropriate for the material that we're placing in it. The last thing that we want to do is have some kind of a endothermic reaction because there was incompatibility. That stuff is going to go up very, very quickly. Switching over to our water reactive type materials, right? It's water reactive. We don't want water around it. So naturally we want to keep all sources of water away from the spill. Now, this becomes part of our behavioral prediction, right? Is something that I'm going to do in the future going to cause water to come in contact with this material? That could look like opening it up to the atmosphere in a hot, humid day. That could look like flooding from a hose stream. It could look like me handling it with gloves on, but those gloves have moisture on them. We want to do everything we can to eliminate the water sources.
And cover with dry sand or other inert absorbents. I got to say, like the dry sand is the part of it. Like if you look in the ERG, it makes me laugh because if you go to the Class 4 placard and you jump to the orange pages, it'll say use dry earth. And you're like, that modifier of dry is really important.
Huge.
And they're like, I don't get it. Like, I'm just going to start digging and I'm not going to really look for dry stuff. It's like, yeah, it could get exciting if you don't pay attention to those little words like dry.
Yeah, which is fine if you're in like Arizona or New Mexico, but try finding dry earth in Seattle. Like good,
Yeah.
you know, you have to take the guidance that you're doing and apply it to the environment that you're in. Using dry methods to recover materials. Now, dry, remember, when we talk about dry methods, we're talking about water. So if I have something and I put oil on it, and that oil is water-free, that is considered a dry method. Just because it's slippery and a liquid, that does not count it as being wet. Dry is without water.
And you want to monitor for hydrogen gas evolution. And you're saying to yourself, wait a second, I don't have a hydrogen meter. You kind of do. Your hydrogen meter, your CO sensor will go off for hydrogen. So I'm not saying it's for it, but I'm saying there's Uncle Bob's hack number 1 for this episode. So that is a good one. So you can check for your hydrogen gas evolution. And then we have things like spontaneously combustible spills, right? These things don't need help. They don't need ignition sources. They don't need anything like that. So we want, in this case, prevent air exposure during cleanup operation. And this is one of the ones, like Mike was saying, you put it underneath oil or something like that. The ones I've seen done like this, they've always been under like a mineral oil because they're so humidity reactive. They're so water reactive that the humidity in the air is, and that's why they call them air reactive. It's kind of misleading.
Pops them off. But in order to do that, right, we have a couple of different things that we can use. A blanketing agent like oil, the dry sand. I wouldn't even go towards dry sand. I think I would try more of an inert atmosphere, right? If I can figure out a way to isolate the atmosphere and then inert it, then I can reduce that oxygen concentration. And even if it wants to react with the moisture that's in the air, there's not enough oxygen to complete a full combustion. So you eliminate oxygen from the category.
And don't help it. Remove the heat sources. Like it's got its own heating plate with it. Not really. It's not really.
Well, you just don't want to add to the problem, right?
No.
Now, one of the things that we want to do when we're dealing with the spontaneous combustibles is there should always be somebody who's dedicated with a thermal imaging camera or a temp gun monitoring for temperature increases during handling. This is a situation where you are not going to be like, I think that's starting to light on fire. It's just going to suddenly whoosh, light on fire. So we want to see small incremental heat changes, which means the thermal imaging camera we're using has to be a hazmat style imaging camera where you have like 1 or 2 degree changes are visible on the monitor. Your regular standard fire department thermal imaging camera is not going to handle this job. And we know this stuff because shit has happened in the past. We've got case studies of these class fours going on fire and bad things happening. So one of the first ones has to do with the first responders kind of screwing up on this one, and it was an AL Solutions metal dust explosion. This is a case study. It happened back in 2010 in December in West Virginia. It specifically focuses on titanium and zirconium metal dust, which are classified as a 4.1 flammable solid. There were 3 fatalities, 1 injury, and the metal dust explosion also involved combustible, well, it was the combustible metals. The things that explode was the combustible metals. So what happened on this one, Bob?
Okay, so at approximately 1:20 p.m., so right in the middle of the business day, a metal dust explosion occurred in a blending and press room when zirconium particulates ignited in a blender. That's some shake.
That's delicious with some strawberries in the morning. Oh, nothing is going to get you going faster.
Now, this explosion was initiated by the metal-to-metal contact between the blender blades and the blender sidewall, which then created sparks that ignited the zirconium dust.
Now, how do we end up getting involved in this one? So a nearby volunteer firefighter heard the explosion and immediately proceeded to the scene. We won't mention the department or anything like that, but they were a volunteer department. They were there within a few minutes. Firefighters attempted to access the building through the office area, but the fire was way too intense. They couldn't enter. By the time they were able to get into the explosion area, there were already 2 deceased operators, and the building's automatic water deluge system had already begun to activate before the firefighters arrived. Which,
now,
I mean, if we're talking about like water reactive stuff, and you have that is really a very much an inappropriate fire suppression method.
Right. So, which brings you to the way the fire suppression systems. The facility was equipped with a water deluge fire system, which, if you don't know what that is, once the water goes into the system, it's not held back by sprinklers or any type of holdup. It's basically, I think they call it like a perforated pipe, where they just cut slots every X amount of inches into the thing, and it just gushes. It's just a sieve. So this is contrary to the recognized industry practices for metal fires. Now, the CSB report specifically notes, and I quote, "The installation of a deluge system to control a metal dust fire was contrary to recognized industry practices and to the titanium and zirconium MSDSs, which at that time, for extinguishing metal dust fires."
So you could turn around and go, hey, maybe they didn't know. Maybe they didn't know. But in actuality, there were previous instances with water use at this facility. The Chemical Safety Board found that previous instances used fire to put out fire with hose lines, and they exposed firefighters to potential health hazards at that time, which not only does that kind of represent a fault on the manufacturer's end, right, the facility's end, but that's a huge fault to the firefighter's end, because you shouldn't be responding multiple times to the same facility, screwing up using the same methods of putting out the fire that didn't work the first time.
Right.
There was absolutely a lack of equipment. There was no Class D fire extinguishers that were appropriate for the metal fires within the facilities. And the company actually had a policy in their ERP that was just let the metal fires burn and wait for the fire department. So by the time the fire departments get there, there's been nothing to try to bring these things down, and the firefighters themselves are responding without the proper suppression agent when they arrived on scene to begin with. So the whole thing ended up being a kind of a screw up on both ends.
I think we should kind of, because zirconium and titanium, again, they're exotic metals, but people don't understand what. So let's just go. The HMIS flammability rating for titanium is 3 or 4. Right, so you're looking in that the 704 symbol. You're going to get a 3 or a 4, depending on some minutia of it. But that's pretty significant, right? So titanium, 4. Ignition characteristics. Well, when you have the fine particulates, they easily ignite in air and can ignite spontaneously, especially if you have a slightly elevated oxygen level, because those flammable ranges modify. And as far as water reactivity, large amounts of water can quench small fires, but water should not be used on large fires because it reacts with the burning metal to produce hydrogen gas.
Now, the zirconium hazards, that has an HMIS flammable rating of 3 or 4, just like the titanium, but it also has an auto-ignition quality. And small particulates with less than 2% moisture can auto-ignite in air at room temperature, making it extremely explosive. So a dust cloud of this stuff with like 100 grams per meter cubed are considered to be explosives, and for fire suppression, much of the MSDS advises to let the material burn out and not fight the fire. So when it comes to the fire departments responding on scene, when it comes to this deluge system that they put in place, the wet zirconium, that helped result in explosions, and that can absolutely create a larger, worser scenario, for lack of better words.
So there's a couple of things we could pull out of this. If you're going to a Class D, you don't want to use small amounts of water, right? This is kind of what I'm drawing out of these stories. Is this causes more of an explosive hydrogen gas generation. So if you're going to throw water, throw tons of water, like a lot of water, right? So flooding quantities only. It must be used. And I wouldn't just start throwing water on Class 4s like, well, Bob said.
Yeah,
just start dumping water.
Open the gates and go.
Right? Like, you got to understand that standard firefighting techniques, things that we go to house fires, like this volunteer fire department, use standard firefighting techniques on these things. And when you're talking about an exotic metal, Class D metal, there's a reason why there's another classification for it, because it's outside the purview of normal firefighting. So if you're going to something in your district that's a Class 4, you should have a separate playbook for that.
One of those playbook things is having enough Class D extinguishing agent with you for metal fires. If you know, and this is one of those things where it's like, oh, like I don't really know what's in my first due area. Bullshit, you should know what's in your first due area. Because if I have any kind of facility that's metal powder, metal shavings, metal this, I'm going to have a substantial amount of Class D fire extinguishing agent, either at my disposal through the fire department, or I'm going to push to make sure that the facility has the required stuff to extinguish the metal fires. You turn around and you try to use, even if you're like, okay, all right, I know it's not supposed to use water, but I've got tons of CO2 or tons of dry chem. I've got purple K over here. That's not going to cut it. It needs to be a Class D extinguisher. If you have no other option and you have to let it burn, then you need to let it burn in a controlled manner. And I would personally prefer a controlled manner burn than using some kind of inappropriate suppression agent and making it far worse.
Some of the things that were interesting from our research into this is that metal dust fires, they cause what they call sparking air, right? Where you start seeing like little starbursts in the air kind of thing. That is in the cop business, they call that a clue. Right? So that is one of those things that you can have. And then also in this, there was other times where there was secondary explosions due to the accumulation of dust. The first explosion blows a dust cloud out, and now you have like a concentration in air varying as it expands. And so now you have a new flammable range that just was generated. That
happens if you apply material incorrectly while you're trying to put out the fires as well. That's where that whole air push pressure, you want to make sure to blanket it lightly.
And you got to keep in touch. There's a reason why this is Class D, is because they're exceptionally hot. You're talking about a regular combustible fire, let's say in a house or something like that. You're talking about 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere around there. We're talking in Class D, you're talking 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit or more. So it's a different playbook. If you have Class 4s in your district, you should know about them first off, and second off, have a second playbook for them.